Hey guys, it's Jamali Francis at Jamali Francis's Archi Instinct, and today what we will be doing is what is a site analysis. As I said from last lesson or lecture, video, whatever you guys want to call it, from the previous video, I told you guys I'll go a bit more in depth on what is a site analysis. So first things first, what is a site analysis? So a site analysis is a pre-designed research activity which focuses on the existing and potential conditions of the actual site. So sort of things that are in a site analysis. So when it says that, we're talking about the neighbors, the plants, the sun, the wind, the other buildings around, the noise. You got to factor in everything, absolutely everything. It is critical, it's important. Without this, you kind of, nowadays you have to build for the future, and without knowing these things, you're just building a building which is going to become inconvenient within a matter of time. So you got to really think about this. So first things first, sun path and rotation. Why is this important? The sun plays a big role when building the buildings. One, in London, I'm giving you guys a hint. If you work and live in London and you're doing architecture, engineering, anything, make sure that you know that the sun rises at east and sets at west. Because why? That's just how it is. Just know in certain areas it might be a bit off or up, down, whatever, but majority of London, the sun rises at east and sets at west. As you can see here on the stereographic diagram, from here, that's north, up here, to the right, you've got east, to the bottom, you've got south, to the left, you have got, whoa, never eat shredded wheat. Sorry, got lost myself. So here you got west. As you can see, the sun rises from east to west. Sun plays a big role because if you've got a building and you've got surrounding buildings and that sun hits a building that's bigger than your building, you're going to get a lot of shadow. So you got to really think about, okay, do you want your building to go here? And if my building does go here, right next to this tall building that is giving my site a lot of shadow, will I have to add a lot of artificial light? One, cost already. You got to think about those sort of things. Oh, how will I be able? What is around? Like you have to think. What the sun plays a big part. Will I be able to put solar panels? Do I have enough sun path to put solar panels on my house? Because if I don't, then I'll be putting solar panels and not getting any sun, and I've gone and wasted money. So you got to really kind of think about what the sun is actually doing and if it's doing its job within the site that you have. Because sometimes it might not make sense for you to have solar panels, or it might not make sense for you to even build there. Hence why no one's built there and the land is kind of derelict, because you're not getting no sun, and it's kind of, there's a requirement for sun to come through in a house. So make sure you look that up. I'm not going to tell you guys unless you actually want me to. Leave it in the comments what you want me to add and what not to add. But the sun is very important. At the bottom, as you can see here, www.suncalc.org. This website here, all you have to do is put in the postcode address anywhere in the world, and it will show you the sun path and sun rotation of where you're about. So if you're planning, for example, you don't have to be an architectural student or an engineer student. All you have to be is a normal person. You don't have to be, well, you are, but you have to, literally all you have to put is the address. And if you're planning to put solar panels on your house, for example, do your own research. Find out, is it going to be worth putting solar panels on the top of my roof? Do I get enough sun? These little things, you do your own research, find out, discover and do. Next is the climate. The climate is very important because, for example, it's a sunny area, you get a lot of sunlight. Your house is going to be very hot now. So how do you cool it down? Ventilation systems and etc, etc. Or it might be a very rainy area where you can get lots of build-ups, which can make your area a high flood risk area. You've got to think about that. Is it a very cold area where you get a lot of ice and snow, which makes your house go cold? Needs to put more insulation in the walls or a different type of insulation. You got to think about that stuff. So you got to think about how the climate can technically affect your area, and Can it be hazardous? For example, as I said earlier, flood risk. If there is a flood in your area and you've got a basement, will the planning go through for you to get that basement put in your plans? As if it floods, your whole basement's gonna flood and that could cause a risk to someone dying. That's the extremes. So you got to really be careful and think about what you're doing when you're actually looking at a site, because these things play big factors on people's life. Because remember, you're building homes for people to kind of stay in, so you got to kind of stay on top of everything when you go and look. Not kind of, you have to. Next, wind direction, extremely important. Why? Ventilation, big thing when you're doing housing. If you do not have enough ventilation within the home, you will die. Why? Because CO2 emissions. Who releases it? Humans, cars, everything. But we take in oxygen, let out CO2. And if we breathe out enough CO2, we won't be able to live. We'll die off our own fumes. So you have to be able to let enough oxygen within the house so you can breathe and live. But let me stop messing around and the ventilation. So you got to think about the wind directions. When on site, you got to think about how strong are the winds. Will you have to add a mechanical ventilator, or will you be able to let it naturally flow because there's enough wind coming? So you got to really think about, when you stand up on site, just stand in the middle of the site or where you plan to put your dwelling and just think, okay, is there enough wind coming here? If not, down below, wind finder, you can check the actual speeds and the direction of winds, which is a big help when doing a site analysis, because it's right in front of you. There's no hiding. It's just wind finder and everything's there. You don't have to do the hard work and go search on the Google website or wait till the morning news. You can just literally go on wind finder and it tells you everything. Temperature, important too. Hot summers, smooth winds, etc, etc. You don't want a lot of, you don't want to have a lot of humid. It might be humid because there's no wind, so you got to think about adding AC unit to your house. So you got to really do your research when on site and off site. So it's not just all on site. So when you go and do your site analysis, it's not all on site. Some of it is off site, doing your own research. Surrounding dwellings. As you can see here, this picture, it shows big tall skyscrapers in New York City, but what's at the bottom of all of it? Artificial lighting, which nowadays it's okay, but we want to try and make the world a greener place, which is very important. But that's another topic that I'm going to speak on. But here, as you can see, there's some tall high-rise buildings, a lot of sunlight, boom, hit that building. What's behind it? A whole bunch of shadows, which you don't want. So if your site is behind one of a big building, you got to think, okay, cool. Now I've got a lot of shadow covering me. So what am I meant to do? Am I just meant to add a bunch of lights? Or is there a way of rotating your building on the actual site to kind of make it get enough sunlight? So you got to think about those things when on the site. What sort of buildings are around you? Is it a landmark? Are you going to have a lot of tourists and people coming here? Is there shopping malls near you? You got to really like think, what am I building and why am I building it? What is around it? Like, you got to kind of make sure you know to yourself what is around it and what you're doing. So kind of put those things in perspective. Is it private? Do you have an elderly home? Is it a school? Is it a communal hall? You got to think, is it a residential place where a lot of people live and some people might not mind? Is it a public route? There's different things that you got to put. See, just make sure you scan around your whole area, not just your site, but what's around it as well, because you will know what to build by knowing what is around it. So you got to really look into what is around, what sort of buildings are around you. Next is the greenery and nature. Boom. This here is vital. You guys are thinking animals and trees. Well, yes. Animals, for starters, are covered by the RSPCA. They've got their insurance, yeah? So if you go in and think, oh yeah, this land is good, I'm going to go and build here. and then the council's gonna go, whoa, 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 let me call up the RSPCA and find out. And they're gonna be like, sorry mate, you can't cut down the trees because those birds live in there, so you're only gonna be able to build around it. Then you're gonna think, oh, I don't want this land anymore. But if you didn't do that in the first place, your site analysis, you wouldn't know that. So make sure you look into that, because animals, homes, nature, you can't cut things down. Trees, they are covered something, they are covered by their insurance company. Technically it's called a TPO, which is tree protection order. So if a tree is maybe rare or it's been there a long time, you kind of can't cut it down. It's got its insurance policy. You really can't. It's giving back to the earth. So you got to think about that. Are there parks nearby where children play, balls are getting kicked, which are likely to hit your wind? You really gotta just stand and look. This is the main thing, because a lot of people will pull up to the site to do their site analysis and be like, talk with their friends, say, okay, yeah, that looks nice. Yeah, I could put something there. And then they go home and then they're thinking, what did I just do? So these are the things that you're looking out for. So make sure that you always looking to see if any trees in your area have TPOs and if any animals. One good thing is, if you cut down a tree, you can replant a tree elsewhere, or get it replanted if it's a rare tree. For example, if it's a very important building. So, but you'd have to look into planning for those things. So make sure you're just aware of what sort of trees are on your land when you go do your site analysis, because you don't want to go there, tell your employer, yeah, we can build this here, and he says, hold on, I just got a call from the TPO agency and they're telling me now that we can't build there because why didn't you do your work? You're going to get the blame. So make sure you do it right the first time. Next, utilities. Vital, very, 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 very vital. As utilities are literally things that are surrounded, like we're surrounded by, because when you go to a site to look at a site, first things that you want to look for, power boxes. Are there any electrical boxes near me? What's on the floor? Look to see where your electrical main lines may run. Are there any overhead power lines? Okay, because there's overhead power lines, I might only be able to build to a certain height. Are there any sewages? Obviously, you'll know this by looking on the floor, and you'll see the sewer lines. You might smell a funny smell if there's a leak or something. But really, kind of just reach out to look for these things. The refuge strategy. You might want to go back to the sites a couple times and see, okay, cool. Is there any, when are they taking their bins out? Is it every day? Is it every week? Is it twice a week? These are things that you got to look for, because no one's going to want a home if no one's taking the rubbish. It has to be done. So you can find the refuse strategy on your local government websites, or you might be able to ask around within the area. I don't tend for you guys to do this, so whatever you can do on site, you do, and whatever you can't find, you do your research online. What electricity lines are there? You can look into that, because electricity. How's your house meant to function without any electricity? Plumbing, and then things like public routes, trains, buses. What is around? Are these things going to affect your area? Do people normally walk along your road? Hence why there's no parking for the actual house, because it's a public route. You got to think about those things, which is very important. You can find a lot of this on government websites, but majority of it you're going to be able to see. Things like electricity and sewages, all of that might be found in the history of the area, on previous plans and everything, so you can look into those. Topography. What is a topography? So topography is literally the different heights of which land kind of stays. So you could be at the top of a hill or bottom of a hill. So you gotta kind of look into these things, because it goes back to everything links. If you're at the top of the hill, yes, you might get a lot of sunlight, so you've got to think about different things, or you might get a lot of winds because you're higher up on a different level. But if you're at the bottom, you might get some shadows, or you might be on a slope because you're going downhill, which can lead to bad foundations, cracking, and houses move is like you gotta move in. You gotta really think about these things. If you live between two hills, are you at a flood risk? Because if it rains, that whole bit is just very, very watery. Like you really got to think about these things when you're doing your site analysis. One website that will help you find the topography of your area is Cab Mapper. Again, it's exactly like Sun Calculator and Wind Finder. All you got to do, put in the postcode and it will find the area. You scale it down to what area you're looking for, and it will do the rest for you. So make sure you look into these when you're doing work on AutoCAD, etc., etc. These things will help you. Next, noise. Noise is vital when you're on site. What noises are you hearing? Because I'm sorry, if you've got a train station next to you, you ain't gonna put single glazed windows or put the best rooms at the back, because all you're gonna hear is noise. So you got to think about that. The noise really helps with the rotation, what you're gonna put there. If you're even gonna bother putting down the house there, you got to think, is it reasonable? What noises are there? Like, is it worth doing? There's noises that come about are like trains, buses, cars, people, shopping centers, parks, schools, and factories. So you really have to. There's way more things than that, but see where noise is coming from. Is it quiet, or is it very, 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 very loud? You gotta really think about these things when you're on site. Types of soil. So if you go to a site and there's no building there, which you're very lucky if you do go and find, you're just going to look at land. You got to really look at the types of soil. Is it clay soil, sandy soil? Do you get what I'm saying? Because if you go and dig, if you want to dig a foundation and then you've got this rubbish kind of soil, you won't be able to do anything. You have to get contractors in and get builders in and get engineers in to see if, unless you're actually specialized in that. But you got to make sure you know what soil you're working with. Make sure that's vital. You might want to, the client might say they want nice landscape done, but they ain't got the right soil, so you're gonna have to bring in a whole load of topsoil, which is not really, that's another cost. So you got to really know what you're working with to provide the best outcome for your clients. Floodplains, floodplains, floodplains. Oh dear, oh dear. As I said, was talking about earlier, a lot of flooding within the area that you're in. This could be on site analysis. You can see where it could be. Is there a lot of drainage on that road? Is that due to a lot of rain? Because it builds up. Is it deep? Is it in a deep road? Is the topography? Are you on a lower bit of land where all the water just runs to? Are you at the bottom of the hill? You got to really look into these things. So in London, there's different levels of level of flood areas. There's level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So you got to really see, okay, cool. Am I in a high risk area? Am I in a low risk area? What is the flood strategy? If your house was to flood, where are you meant to go? What are you meant to do? There's a lot of hazards within the area. If you flood, people die if they get trapped inside the house. You got to be very real, because when you're building, you're not building houses for strangers. You're building houses for humans. So if anything's wrong with that house and something happens, you're at fault. So you got to take ownership for that. So make sure you really do the work right the first time, because it's lives that you're dealing with at the end of the day. Risk assessment. So you got to look into what's bad. What's bad? What are you going to add to this risk assessment to let people know, okay, is it worth building this building, and what are the risks to building here? You got to kind of come with all that information at once. So make sure you know what you're doing. One website that you can find all your floodplains on is the Gov website at www.gov.co.uk, and then you just search flood levels, floodplains, anything to do with flood will come up. It will bring up a chart, everything, and there you go, Bob's your uncle. And last but not least, the history. This was a very boring topic or even lesson in secondary school, but history is very, 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 very important. because you want to know what you're working with. What's the history of the site? What baggage is it coming with, or what luxuries is it coming with? If you're getting a nice stone building, you know, yeah, it's gonna last. But if you're getting a brick building that's kind of been worn down over the years and it's coming near its leaves, you might as well just knock it down and get something new. But it might be a landmark. You know what I mean? So you need to know. So some of the things is, what time and era was it built? Is it a Victorian building? Is it an Edwardian building? Is it a postmodern building? You got to think of what time era was it built in. The roads, what roads do you have? Narrow roads? Do you have wider roads? Is there a lot of, if you have wider roads and bigger buildings, you might have bigger sewage systems underground. So you got to think about what type of area is it. Is it a quiet area? Is it a loud area of like the history of the area? Was it a place where, oh, they threw a lot of parties, or like, is it? You need to find out what sort of things was within this area. Might not be necessary. It can go a bit off task when doing this. So make sure you just find out the basics. And if it needs looking further into, look into, because you can get sidetracked very easy when looking into the history. Another thing that you want to look at is the foundation. You go back in time. If you go on Digimap, which is very helpful, I'll put the link in the description, you can see how the area was built up. Maybe before now there was less buildings. Why? Because there was less people to accommodate. So you have to look at the foundation of the building. Do you have a screw pile? Do you have a raft foundation? Like, what sort of foundation is there? So it's only up to you to go and look. If there's no foundation, what foundation is best to put there? And then last but not least, what are the boundaries of the building? Because yeah, you've put your house on this plot, but what boundaries does it have? Can you extend it? Is there more potential for the building? Why hasn't no one built there yet? What is there? Do you get what I'm saying? So you have to really look into these things and see. But guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you liked it. Please subscribe and let me know what you want to see next. Next, I might do whatever you guys want. I'm capping. I'm going to do whatever you guys want to see. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for next week's video at 7 o'clock.